Welcome to 101.1 FM WBRULP WFOOLP WVVXLP Providence. I'm your co-host, Dhruv.
And I'm your co-host, Alejandro Jackson.
And this is the Outta Pocket Podcast,
where we pull conversation topics out of our pocket.
And occasionally go out of pocket.
So on today's show, we want to cover the workaholic mindset. So in light of final season, the two of us and many of our peers have really been struggling with keeping up with all the work that's coming our way. You know, I feel like a lot of us would identify ourselves as overachievers, and with all the work that is coming at us at such a rapid pace, we tend to really, buckle down and start to make work the majority of our entire lives, when it comes to preparing for tests and, completing these assignments on time.
Yeah, that's facts. Yeah, I mean, I know I myself particularly have been feeling really weird this last week because, there was like that huge push right before Thanksgiving break, and I was finally able to like go back, see my family, actually just take some time and chill during the break. And now here I am, and it's like I have work, and I know I have work, but honestly, it's really manageable. It's not like an insane amount of work, But the problem is I'm feeling, how do I describe this? I'm feeling like I'm not being productive unless I feel like I'm stretching myself ridiculously thin and almost burning out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So personally for me, I guess over Thanksgiving break, I never really stopped working. I continued to do work for my engineering class and trying to put together a club application that I had to submit earlier in the week, and so like I think it definitely took a toll on me later on, sort of not being able to have a couple of days to just do nothing. I think like sometimes you just need a day to just stop everything and just kind of, take care of yourself. I kind of suffered the effects of not doing that earlier this week. But yeah, at the same time, I do get where you're coming from, where there's sort of this feeling of, I want to say regret that like you didn't do enough, that you didn't like put enough time in when like if you haven't felt like you've just spread yourself thin. Yeah, I know that there are some days where, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, damn, I could have done this better. Or like, I could have put more time doing this. I could have, split my time more evenly. It's just, you start to get into that mindset of regret.
It's not only the mindset of regret. It's also just like the feeling like you haven't accomplished anything. Because I do know on paper, like, yes, I got this so-and-so task accomplished, but I feel like unless I'm like starving myself and grinding at all hours of the day and feeling like I'm about to collapse, I feel like I'm not being productive. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of like a mindset that carried on from high school, I would say. Like in high school, I was like, there was a lot of opportunity to be involved in a lot of various like extracurricular activities and whatever. And, by virtue of like, being here, I feel like everyone on this campus can sort of relate to being like an overachiever and really putting forth a lot of extra effort into not just academics and grades, but stuff beyond that in high school. And, I was basically running, like, all cylinders firing, going, like, absolutely ham for, like, years. And, I feel the thing that definitely changed that, for me at least, was the pandemic. Because everything, literally overnight, just, like, screeched to a halt. Yeah. And like all the activities and clubs or whatever that I was working towards and putting effort towards for years just like stopped. Mm-hmm. And granted, I didn't really get to see a lot of that effort pay off in the way I would have wanted my senior year because of, the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And it also, to me, felt like, on one hand, it was beneficial because I was really able to sit back and think and reevaluate a lot of stuff in my life. Like, okay, what am I doing? I was at that phase in my life. I was really locked into just like habit at that point. It was literally just routine to get up and go and give it 100% every day, to the point where like I couldn't even notice when I felt like awful until it was too late and I was in a really bad way. And going through that and having to come back here like and we've been very fortunate to have a relatively normal first semester, I would say. And having to go from basically like all cylinders firing to cold turkey to whatever like Kafkaesque nightmare that was online school to finally coming back to college and sort of like jumping right back. It feels to me like we're jumping right back to where we left off, except I can barely recognize the person who I like who that person was anymore. I genuinely feel like I'm feeling like I can't accomplish those things in the same way, because I'm noticing myself getting burned out and tired. And I don't know if it's just like, I'm so used to doing nothing that I got lazy or like complacent, or if it's like a genuine like improvement almost in a way of my mindset to where like I'm finally able to like recognize when I like see myself like going down that like really exhausting path of the grind. The only problem is like I just don't feel like I'm accomplishing much anymore because I'm not that person. And in some ways it's good and in other ways it's bad.
Yeah. So, the pandemic definitely changed a lot. I know. Things got to the point, I guess, where like similar to you, like pre-pandemic, it was a grind every day, and working, and then everything changed with the pandemic and with us being sent home, and then I became a lot more, relaxed because things kind of. There wasn't a lot to do with all the uncertainty going on. I know, like, basically right after we got sent home, a lot of my classes were like for like an hour a day, like, or just like super brief, super brief, and it was just like, oh, checking in, okay, this is your assignments, basically like, all right, bye. Like, and so then there wasn't as much work to do, so I wasn't as much of a workaholic, and then I ended up going back to school in my senior year, like pretty early on in my senior year, and then it became the same thing over again, except with the added, there's a pandemic, and like you could get sick being at school, but everything else is the same, so whatever. And as you were talking, I really like one of the notable things that sort of hit me was like, so there were points where like kids would get sick, and then like we'd get sent home and get quarantined, and like it was kind of a relief, like in the sense of like you got to be home for 2 weeks, and you'd be a lot less stressed, and so you didn't have to worry about waking up that extra hour early to actually get out of the house, like you could just roll out of bed and log on to class.
Yeah.
So there was the pros and cons to that.
Yeah, my experience was kind of different during the pandemic because I did have the option to go back in person as early as October, but I didn't actually end up going back until I got my first shot in March. So I was really like, I got really tired and burned out by doing online school. Just namely like the utter lack of social interaction from online school. Being someone who is fairly extroverted, I really like got a lot of energy from interacting with other people and seeing my friends every day at school. And even when I was like, in like an extracurricular commitment, which to be honest, like really like put a halt on my, like it really hindered my like quote unquote like social life in high school, because I frankly just didn't have time to hit someone up on like a weekday night or even over the weekend and be like, hey, want to like hang out, want to like go play Xbox or whatever. But so I got a lot of my interaction done through things like band or like Quiz Bowl or whatever.
Yeah.
And when that stopped, a lot of how I kept in touch and like interacted with my friends stopped with it. And I think that definitely contributed to part of that pandemic burnout. And on top of that, just juggling the college application process and all the stresses that come with that. So, like, it's definitely, it's a market shift from going from like 100 to 0 and now coming back here and in a way having to sort of relearn how to like be in a academic setting, because I had one method that worked in like junior year, and then I had to change that up to make it through the quarantine year, and now we're back. But it's not like I could go back to my ways from high school because college is just such a different environment,
Very different. Yeah.
So yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah. With the whole, there's a point you brought up, which was something along the lines of basically feeling like basically pushing through, like you were just like, and how here in college, like it feels like you've learned how to tell yourself when to stop. Essentially, do you think any of that has to do with us having basically the goal of getting to college in high school,
No.
as opposed to now we're like,
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to say lost, but like now the future doesn't seem so certain as to like where we're headed. In
Yeah.
high school you essentially, for the most part, or not for everybody, this doesn't go for everybody out there, but the majority of high school students, their eyes are set on college, and so you sort of have this image of where you're going, and I guess in a way it acts as a sort of motivation. At least for me personally, I know that was the idea of like getting to college.
Oh yeah,
was, like,
100%.
very motivating. And now as I'm navigating being in college and sort of figuring out where I'm gonna go, and what exactly is my major gonna be, what am I going to spend the rest of my life doing, these things are now a little bit more uncertain, and I feel like now, because of that, when you're just working, and you don't really have like a definitive end goal, I think it's a lot easier to sort of burn out, because I feel like you start to like question, like, okay, like, why am I doing all this? And I don't say that to sound unappreciative of the things I'm learning, but obviously, like, you kind of just don't know where you're headed, and so I feel like it's a lot easier to burn out, because you're kind of just you keep pushing and pushing without a sort of end goal in sight. Sometimes a lot of people are still trying to figure out where they want to go, so yeah. So with that being said, I feel like the road to college definitely shapes a lot of people's mindsets in high school, and as you pointed out earlier, many of the people on this campus had to have adopted that overachiever mindset to get to this point, to be able to get to one of the top institutions, educational institutions in the country. And so, in high school, you sort of learn to push yourself, to rise above and beyond, to meet the occasion, to meet the challenges that come your way. And I think that because of that, like, the road to college is what shapes the workaholic mindset for a lot of people. You kind of need to adopt it to make your way on the path that is getting to college, and a lot of times it doesn't just fade when you get to college. You don't lose that mindset. It kind of always sticks with you. I don't know. Have you felt like that? Like,
Yeah, no, I definitely agreed with like that first half. I feel a large part of the reason, looking back on it now, large part of the reason I was able to just absolutely like go like go ham in high school was because I had like such a definitive goal, like by like it's all gonna be worth it in the end. Is what I was sort of telling myself. Like it's all gonna be worth it when I get into the college of my dreams, and like I get to enjoy myself. And I'm very fortunate that I am like I did get exactly where I both wanted and frankly where I think I needed to be in this part of my life. And so now I'm very grateful for that. But it also comes with now like it's really hard to find motivation to do like even those basic things, because it's sort of like in my mind now, like there's not I don't want to say there's no consequence per se, but it certainly feels in high school it feels like, oh man, like I got this bad grade on a test, or like I got this bad grade in the class. That's going to hurt my chances for something later down the line. And I mean, of course, if you're applying to like some professional school, like yeah, they'll take a look at your grades. But honestly, if you're doing pretty much anything else, college is like grades have a little less weight here, in my opinion, I think, because if as long as you get your diploma and you're not like failing out, you can very solidly get a job. It's not like in a job interview someone's going to be like, so what exactly was your GPA in freshman year of undergrad? It's in my opinion like kind of sometimes it's a little frustrating to like to sort of be like, okay, I have this assignment, I have this thing I need to do, and then there's this nagging voice in the back of my mind, like, but is it really worth it to like expend yourself like that, and try and it's hard to describe, really.
So yeah, funny enough, I guess like as I was saying with the whole the image of college, and like and like as I was saying earlier, so like in high school there's sort of this image this image of this end goal, and how in college not so much, it's not as clear. Like you don't know if you're going to grad school, you don't know if towards the end of your college years you'll get a job opportunity, and you sort of transition just straight into the workplace. But yeah, I guess like as we were saying, like, in college with no sort of certain clear image, it's a lot easier to sort of start to question those things. However, like I think personally, the workaholic mindset still has stayed with me. It definitely hasn't gone away. Mostly, and to be honest, I couldn't give you a solid answer as to why. It kind of just, it just comes through whenever I'm working on an assignment, whenever I have, that list of things to do that I really need to just get out of the way. I start to, really sit down and just like in my dorm, and I'll just for hours just cram away at these things. And it definitely does take a toll when you start to cram, and you kind of put everything else on the back burner. I know personally, throughout high school, and at times in college. Can't lie, can't say that I've shed these habits. A lot of the time I would, put work before anything else, like eating, sleeping, making time to, do things I was really passionate about, do things I really enjoyed. And that can definitely take a toll on you. You have to be careful with dedicating so much time to work because you'll suffer for it. You'll definitely suffer for it. You'll get to the point where you stress yourself out and you can only do so much to, sort of unintentionally harm your body,
Right.
And before your body says, hey, yo, that's it. It's a wrap. I'm putting a stop to this. And, unfortunately, that happened to me this week where, just, for working so consistently and at the same pace and for so long, yeah, I hit the point where it was like, all right, you're done. You're out of commission. So, I guess for you, do you feel like, that, you have this, sort of urge to just cram all the time and just work all the time, or is it like...
Well, yeah, and that's sort of, a little bit of a conflict here because at least in high school, because you were pretty much confined at home if you didn't have a car or, on weeknights, what were you gonna do? All you could really do is just sort of you either watch TV or do whatever you want to do around the house to relax, or you work and do homework. And in college, because it's such a different environment, we have to balance classes, extracurriculars if you choose to get involved with an organization on campus, just basic maintenance things like eating, sleeping, doing the laundry, doing chores, showering, and then on top of that, still trying to maintain a social life in college, because that's what a lot of people say is the best part of their college experience, and I would certainly agree. Coming here and meeting a lot of really cool new people from all different walks of life, and sort of seeing all these how we both have shared experiences and also completely different experiences at the same time. It's certainly been a highlight of my experience here. But the problem is then I'm trying to cram all these things, and there's only 24 hours in a day. And so, in high school, I felt pretty much once I got my work done, I'm okay, time to hit the sack. And because of that, I was getting a solid 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night, and I was feeling really good because of it. And now that I'm here, though, I feel because we're always working or in class during the day and even well into the night, I know the experience with us and our friend group, it's basically after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock onwards, we're kind of just sitting together and getting work done. And then only after that, on the rare nights that we actually get our work done early enough to enjoy ourselves a little bit, then we have to sort of work social interaction into the rest of our day. And then that means you go to bed at 2 in the morning and have to wake up for class the next day. So I've definitely been getting hit with that. Trying to balance so many things has meant sacrificing a little bit of my health. So I felt I just feel I don't really have the time to exercise, which has been it's definitely been a problem, because that's a part of my life that it's important to me, and I'm certainly missing it. But at the same time, I'm just so stressed right now that honestly, what can you do, And sacrificing sleep, getting into a really weird eating schedule, because I still try to maintain 3 meals a day, but more often than not, it seems those 3 meals, instead of being breakfast, lunch, and dinner, are like lunch, dinner, and then Joe's at post 11 p.m.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's at least how I feel about the sort of, you know, having to balance everything here and how that's affected my health.
I actually think, in a way, the fluidity of a college schedule has helped in balancing, the whole eating and sleeping and socializing aspects of my life, because in high school, it was a very set schedule. It's from 7:20 in the morning to 2:20 in the afternoon. That was like the 8 hours of class, and including lunch. And then it would be like, okay, get home, or, well, in a pandemic era, high school experience, get home and log on to club meetings. Prior to that, stay after school late and go to club meetings. And I think that very like sort of bunched together schedule, and then like on top of that, homework at night, it made it hard for me to maintain a consistent like eating and sleeping schedule. Like I think definitely, and don't even get me started on the social aspects of things, because there wasn't a lot of time for that, I think, in high school, as opposed to college, where there's a lot of flexibility in the schedule, because you may not have 8 hours a consecutive 8 hours of classes. It might be like 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon. So I feel like for me personally, it's been a lot easier to make time to say, okay, after my 2 hours in the morning, I'll go to breakfast. After my 2 hours, or before my 2 hours in the afternoon, I'll like go to lunch, or and then on top of that, as you were saying earlier, like our friend group tends to just sit down and like do work together, and I think that I personally enjoy that a lot more than doing homework in my room, like in high school, where like I would just like after like so many hours, I would just have to go home, go sit in my room and like do the work. So for me, like the whole flexibility of a college schedule has definitely helped me I guess counteract some of the negative effects of a workaholic mindset, because like by doing these small little things, like going to breakfast, going to lunch, studying with friends, it takes some of the edge off, takes some of the stress off of really like pushing yourself to get everything done, not only on time, but also to the best of your ability. You try to like really like get like 100s on everything. That's like something else in college that I feel like a lot of people have had to get used to, is not always getting like an A, not always getting that A plus, that 100% on everything, because like we're in a completely different ballpark now. Things are super different, and so like that definitely contributes to some of the stress that comes from being a workaholic, when you're constantly working and you're constantly striving for perfection, and like now we're in a place where like it's not, you won't always get that A, and so I feel like it can feel a bit defeating sometimes. I know a lot of people who it's like, damn, like I like in high school, really like top of, like one of the highest ranking members in the class, and like really always striving to like get that A and get that A plus, and now in college is like it's different, like it's for all of us, and like it kind of takes a toll on you. So I think like it's important to make time for those small things, to like eat breakfast in the morning, spend time with friends, because it like all of that eventually will catch up on you, and then once you get put out of commission, it's really hard to get back into the swing of things. You really have to like then push yourself even more to like catch up, now that you like took a day off, because you burnt yourself out. So
and that it like sort of makes things worse, because like you feel like so awful for even like conceivably spending time and taking time to like relax.
Yeah, that's true. That happens to me a lot.
I feel guilty in a way, and it's kind of messed up. No, but I definitely agree that doing work just like with friends in the presence of, like before I got here, a lot of my, a lot of the kids older than me and even my parents were like, in college, a lot of your socialization is going to be through like, getting a study group together and sort of like doing work with each other. And I feel like my experience with that is sort of like two-pronged, because on one hand, I am, I genuinely feel like I get more work done when I'm like very much in the zone.
Yeah.
Got my dual monitor set up, like in my dorm. It's cozy. I got my like snacks in the drawer, or like everything that I could conceivably need, like just in my workspace, and then I just go for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I get more work done when I'm in that setting, but it also gets really tiring and exhausting when you realize at the end of the day, the sun sets at like 4:20 here because Rhode Island is just kind of cursed like that, I guess. And you look out, it's not even 5 o'clock and it's like dark outside, and you're like, I haven't seen my friends all day. So even when I'm not getting as much work done, I very much appreciate the environment of being around other people while doing my work. And I think that sort of gets to, kind of our next like topic. Like what exactly is productivity? Because on one hand, you could say I'm being less productive when I am, doing work with my friends, because I'm physically just not outputting enough. Like, I'm not writing as much words for my essay because I get distracted, or like I can't like really focus and like read my chemistry textbook. But at the same time, I feel like I'm doing something that I want to do and that makes me feel better. And is that not productivity in its own way?
Yeah. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Where like, if I'm in my dorm and just like zoned in by myself, like I can get like a lot done. But at the same time, like it's really easy to tire yourself out like that, and you end up burning yourself out. And then on the other hand, we do work with friends, and we get a study group together, or, just do work like around other people, and it's a lot more fun, but in a way less productive. So you kind of you feel guilty, like you were saying earlier. So I feel like I feel like for the most part, our friend groups developed a pretty healthy balance with like the afternoon, or like sort of like early in the day we all like are like on our own like doing work, and then like we get together like at night, sort of later, like 9-10 to like get work done together. So you kind of offset a little bit of that stress. But in terms of productivity, I think the like definition of am I being productive is different for everybody. I think you can only really feel productive if you feel like you are working towards succeeding at a goal of yours, and then everybody's goals for success are different. So what my image of success is not the same as somebody else's, and so the steps that I take to get to that image of success are not necessarily the same steps somebody else would take to be able to say, yeah, I feel productive, or like I feel like I've spent my time well. And so yeah, I think that as you were saying, like we need to define like what is productivity. Productivity is really kind of different for everybody depending on who you are, and I think that like the first step in I guess maximizing productivity is to really know what you need to do to be productive, and to even know how to do that, you have to first define like where am I trying to get to, or like what steps do I need to take, or what is my end goal, and like then you can figure out what steps I need to take to get there, and then that's how you by taking those steps you end up being and feeling productive. So I don't know, do you agree or sort of disagree?
No, I think you're right. Like I think a large amount of what I at least conceive, and I feel what majority of people conceive as being productive, is sort of like very much influenced by like it's really cliche to be like, oh, we live in a society, but we very much like are affected by the culture and you know the sort of ideas of productivity, getting good grades means good college, and good college means good job means more money for yourself, so you're able to get that like higher standard of living. And at the same time, like you're sort of able to be a quote unquote productive member of society. You're giving back, like contributing to the workforce, the economy, whatever. And it's very easy to get lost in that sort of that web of just like one chain of being productive leading into something else, leading into something else, leading into something else. And I feel like it doesn't, because in all of that, where's the time to sort of ask yourself, who am I? Like what is the kind of person I like being? What are my goals in this life, to make myself feel happy or like fulfilled, and it's very easy to lose sight of that, I feel, just in the way our sort of focus on productivity is like.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like, from a very young age, we have this portrayal of sort of the success of people well, I guess in life, but I feel like very much so like in America is like to get to that higher education. I mean, like I know like a movie series that I'm sure like a lot of us have seen as kids is like High School Musical. And like I get into that because like you watch like High School Musical 1, 2, and 3, and then like at the end of 3 they're graduating and they're going off to college. And so like from a very young age, like I feel like in these subtle ways it's sort of introduced into our society, like even to young kids, that like, oh yeah, going up to college, like this idea of going up to college, it's like what society sort of deems as like the path, the basically like I guess default path for like to take. And I don't really think that's for everybody. I don't think that everybody is meant to be an academic, to be one who like would sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day learning different things, and then to go off to high school and do the same thing, and then go to college and like be in that setting where you're it's basically high school the sequel. And I don't think that's for everybody, but as you were saying, like society has sort of painted this image of like college as the sort of path to success. And so that gets back into the whole idea of workaholic mindset. A lot of us develop this workaholic mindset in order to fulfill that goal of getting to college, and it has taken a toll on a lot of people, especially I think the ones that don't really want to go, or like that college isn't for them, and they like sort of they end up going either because their parents want them to, or they feel like they have to be in order to be successful, but they may not really want to. And, so,
and not even just to be successful, just to make like a working like living wage,
And so I think definitely, I feel like the workaholic mindset, if anything, is sort of more dangerous for them because they're kind of adopting it because they don't really, even though despite them not really even wanting to take up that path, they may want to travel the world or just take up a trade, just and so the whole academic side of things isn't really for them, but they kind of just end up getting swept into it and kind of dealing with it. And so this whole like the concept of like society being an authoritative figure and saying like college is the way, like it's a bit of a, I think, toxic mindset in a lot of ways. And sometimes, like, I mean, obviously college is the way for some people, but I wouldn't say for everybody. And I think that sort of this societal culture we've developed promotes a lot of people becoming workaholics, and yeah, it ends up taking a toll on a lot of kids. They end up getting stressed and burnt out a lot younger than they probably should. So yeah, it's been posing a problem.
Yeah, so I get what you're saying. Yeah, and the college is like just one of those really complicated things, because it's such it feels like such a dominant institution in especially society here in America, but at the same time, like it is there's like all sorts of like familial or external pressures on people to just like go to college. But I feel like we've talked a lot about sort of what breeds the workaholic mindset, and I kind of want to get into how people can sort of make it better for themselves. And I personally found one thing that helped for me is like just having a set of tasks to get done, like literally a to-do list. It sounds really basic, and obviously it's not rocket science here. I'm not like reinventing the wheel. I just something that I found really helped me is literally like how in elementary school like your teachers are like, hey, you got to put it down in the agenda. Yes, and how I'm like,
the infamous agenda.
Definitely like bro, get the agenda out of here. I never wrote a single word in that thing. I just kept it in my head, because I guess I was built different back then. But I guess at some point along the line it got really hard to just keep track of all the things in motion.
Yeah, junior year.
But that's when I found like buying myself a calendar, like a literal like paper calendar that I can hang on the wall and cross off the days as they go by. Not only is it like helpful in planning out like in sort of broad strokes, okay, what's my week gonna look like? What's my month gonna look like? It's also it's satisfying just to be like another day like that I got through,
Yeah.
And you've sort of seen like my system. So I have like 2 calendars that I keep up, one for the month and one for the week. And then like this weekly calendar on this whiteboard, like at the beginning of every week, I sort of evaluate, okay, what are things that need to happen this week? Like, okay, essay due Saturday at midnight.
Yeah.
What needs to go into that to make it happen? Okay, if it takes, I don't know, I'll take Friday afternoon through Saturday afternoon or Saturday night to actually write the paper. How am I going to get to the point where I can write the paper? Oh, I need to outline by like Thursday or Wednesday, and then I like work in small increments back. So, I'm taking these baby steps towards getting the thing ultimately accomplished. And on days where like I finish my work that I've sort of allocated for myself throughout the week, if I'm feeling up to it, then yeah, I might get started on like some easier task the next day. But honestly, like some days when I'm done with work, I just tell myself like, hey, you got through what you needed to get through today.
Yeah.
It's okay to sort of like let yourself like chill out now, And so that's something I've found has helped me a lot. But of course, it's really hard to stick to a schedule sometimes, not just for like motivation or burnout reasons, but also because like
college is mad spontaneous.
Yeah, that things are very spontaneous out here. Plans are always like being made and falling through and changing. So it's like it's mad confusing out here, bro. But
yeah.
but by and large, I've found like having a rough schedule to stick to
Mm-hmm.
helps. Because on the days where I'm like, oh man, I didn't get everything that I wanted to done, that's when I can like realistically bring myself in and be like, okay, you kind of need to grind now. And I sort of get the motivation to do that from being like, cause it basically gives me something to be held accountable to. You know, I can hold myself accountable to something that I scheduled out at the beginning of the week. And I found that has been really helpful for just like planning.
Yeah. So yeah, just listening to your entire system. So I actually use a pretty similar system, I guess, even though, despite us never having talked about exactly how our systems work, in theory they essentially are built to do the same thing. So I like to keep a to-do list as well. And so a philosophy my mother taught me was that the work that you have to do in your life can always be broken down into 4 categories. So there's important and urgent, urgent but not important, important but not urgent, and not important and not urgent. So essentially when I'm constructing my to-do list, I like to rank like all my bullets within these 4 categories. So, you know, if I have something to do, I think to myself, is this important? And how urgent is it? And then I will rank them like accordingly. Now, exactly what is importance and what is urgence, I think they are defined differently for every person. So obviously, what's important to one person is not exactly important to another, and you know, somebody might need 3 days to do a task, and somebody else might need 5. So, you know, for the people that need 5 days to do something, they might rank it more urgently, or that they need to get to it sooner than the person that can do it in 3 days. And so, but basically, this is really helped me because being able to rank my tasks in sort of in terms of importance and urgency, it really helps me figure out what needs priority. Essentially, that's essentially the similarities between, you know, the two our 2 schedules, even though, you know, they're not executed exactly the same. But it's basically figuring out what needs to be prioritized first, and then by getting those things out of the way sooner, you end up less stressed because you don't tend to procrastinate your work that way. You get those really important things done first. Those things that you need to dedicate more time to, maybe, you know, and so and at the end of the day, it leads to you being less stressed. I guess the most important thing to note is the important but not urgent category can really be a concerning one, because
Right, because it sneaks up on you.
yeah, so that is the category of things that can really sneak up on you. So it was like you were saying, but that paper that's due, you know, at midnight during the weekend, you kind of have to figure out like, when are you gonna write it? When are you gonna plan it? And so, you know, working your way backwards from the due date to where you are now really helps you plan out, you know, this is how much time I need to allocate to this thing. And, you know, you start to work on it little by little as the deadline approaches, so that you don't end up stressed and at the last minute, you know, trying to get it done. It really saves you some stress, and it kind of, you know, prevents the burnout that we were talking about from the workaholic mindset. So yeah, these are some tips from us to increase productivity, you know, and also just take breaks. You know, it's a lot easier to get work done in small increments than to, you know, spend a really long time doing work and then burn yourself out, and then, you know, you can't work for a day or two because you need time to recuperate. So, you know, like we were talking about earlier, it's important to give yourself the time to reset. You know, a lot of times people will catch me sighing in the middle of the day and they're like, man, like, you're always sighing. Or like, why are you sighing? Like, is everything okay? And like, most of the time, it's just my way of like decompressing. It's like a way for me to like mentally like check myself, be like, okay, like, you've been doing okay so far. Inhale and exhale and just let it all out. Just like, you know, to reset yourself, square yourself away.
Releasing tension.
Yeah, you know, it's a way for me to like release a lot of the tension, to just, you know, get back to square one, figure out, okay, I've done XYZ. Now, like, what are like the next steps that I'm gonna like take to, you know, get what I need to get done. And I think going back to sort of the the intro to this show was that these are some really important things to keep note of during final season when your finals are all
you got papers and tests flying at you from every direction.
It's not even just a test. It could be a final project. It could be a presentation. A final project. So it's really important to basically keep track of what you need to do, like by priority, like we were talking about, and just break these things down into little small tasks that you can do, so that you don't end up trying to take on the entire world at once, and B, marking things off your to-do list. I don't know for you, but for me, it feels really rewarding,
satisfying.
And so I feel like that satisfaction that you get from just checking these things off, like even if they're the smallest thing, even if it's send this email that you said you would send to this person, which I just realized I have to do. Even those little things and just checking them off make you feel like, okay, that's one more thing I accomplished today, and so like it makes you feel satisfied, and I think in a way it helps prevent that burnout, because you feel a little more at ease with yourself, and you're sort of proud of yourself that you got that one thing done, even if it was so small. But yeah, so
definitely, bro. And sort of as a last little bit for our show, I thought it would be fun to sort of talk about what we do to decompress here, specifically on Brown's campus. So what are some things like that you do to sort of like chill out?
I know us personally, so a few of the things, maybe just small, like just hit a Joe's run, like
definitely,
like you said, 11 p.m.
hitting devious licks, bro.
Devious licks at Joe's, stealing mad barbecue sauce
don't
packets from Joe's.
Don't understand.
Because they only have barbecue sauce packets like once every 2 weeks, and you just have to stock up because you never know when you're gonna see them again. And
real
also,
ones, no.
Yeah, and also other things like having jam sessions with friends. We play music together with you and I and some of our other friends. So little things like that. There are also some more fun things, like you can go save a Mochamp deer.
Oh, that's facts, bro.
Walking around campus, there's quite the multitude of wildlife on Brown's campus, as we have seen. You never know what you're gonna stumble across. Earlier this week, I heard there was a squirrel with a cookie reported on the Andrews tent. You never know where you're gonna see at Brown University. So
yeah, bro. This honestly, mad rodents out here, dude. Like I was fearing for my life. I thought I was about to get jumped by a skunk. Like these skunks are crafty little rascals. They're
That's
like
true. The amount of times that you and I have gone walking and just run into a skunk.
Yeah, they're like chilling outside of like dorms and stuff too. Yes. They're ready to get the jump on us.
In the bushes, yeah.
But yeah, for sure, like some further out of pocket things that one might do here on Brown's campus. Maybe do a little brujeria with like the skin books in the A library.
We still need to go see those. Which
that's facts.
Too, but yeah, touring the John Hay Library.
The tour guide who gets a little too excited about the skin books.
Yeah, about the human flesh books. Yeah, you want to be careful with those, but hey, maybe do some black magic in the basement. You never know. Hey,
bro, we still gotta explore the ratty tunnels. They definitely exist.
They do. Yeah, actually, they do. I'm not encouraging that anybody go explore ratty tunnels. Yeah, if you do, that is not the encouragement of the Outta Pocket Podcast.
Not sanctioned by us.
But yeah, so yeah, these are definitely just some things I know. Taking the time to like explore campus. Mm-hmm. I know, like I think very like in the beginning of the year, like closer to orientation, like we had time to sort of walk around, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of us, walk around and explore Providence, but I feel like at the same time, a lot of us didn't because there were so many events going on.
And also, we were just trying to get used to like finding our way around.
Finding our way, and also meeting people because
crazy.
Yeah, but now that we've been here for a bit, I think it's important to venture out and go different places. We went to was it Cranston?
Yeah.
a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
And just went to a restaurant, Chaska.
What was it, Garden City Market? Or
No, we went to this,
or like
this
that's
restaurant
like the
called
complex it's in.
Oh yeah, this so
Or
this
something
restaurant
like
called
something
Chaska,
along those lines.
and just like it was just a way to like explore
Mhm.
and
Because
just
I
get
really
out
feel
there.
like I have the entire state of Rhode Island at my fingertips, bro.
Yeah, I mean, we have a friend who ran to Massachusetts, so I mean, I can't like
Absolute mad lad, that one.
you know, it's really easy. I mean, luckily Rhode Island is a very small state, so it's really easy to explore. And
Like a
venture
couple of months ago,
Mhm.
just took a bus to, what was it, like, shoot, it was some beach somewhere, but like
Yeah.
it was literally half an hour. If I drive like half an hour back home, I am either like just like getting into the heart of downtown Atlanta, or I'm like in the middle of nowhere, you know.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But it's also been a lot because I feel like at home or in high school especially, like I feel like you know how in a video game, like you have like a small section of the map, and then
Yeah.
like the more like spaces you explore, the more of the map you unlock.
Mhm.
I feel like by the end of high school, because I was involved in all like these various like things,
Mhm.
that pretty much by the end of high school, I'd unlocked every part. I'd been in like the sketchiest like nooks and crannies of like under the football like bleachers, like in
Yeah.
some like closet to get something for band, like in all like the faculty lounges for some, like I've been like literally everywhere.
Mhm.
And it's so refreshing to have a place where it genuinely feels like practically every time I go somewhere new, it's just somewhere I haven't like seen before. I just don't know what to expect,
Yeah.
because like there's so many buildings I pass and I genuinely don't know what the inside of them look like.
Mhm.
And I hope that some point in the coming years that like
Yeah.
I'll get to see the insides of those buildings. It's
Yeah.
like a good thought.
Yeah, and also just like the 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 fact that Brown's campus is like so open and like integrated with the city around it, like it's really easy to just walk somewhere. Like for me back home, walking somewhere was not a possibility. The idea of walking to downtown
Absolutely
is
unfathomable.
not a thing. So
Walking to downtown would take like a solid 6 hours
yeah,
minimum.
Yeah. And so yeah, these are I feel like a couple of things to do. Just I know it sounds cliche, but just go outside. Like I mean, and I say that because like with the whole pandemic, I feel like a lot of us realized just how important actually stepping out into the outside world was. I think a lot of us, you're in high school, like there's always this sort of idealization of the idea of like staying home from school, like like take a sick day, like fake being sick, like
Ferris Bueller type beat.
yeah, like cough, but like and so you can stay home. But then, pandemic hits, and like a lot of us realize like, there were a lot of pluses that came from that, and if anything, it can get more draining and more tiring to not step out of your house, and so I think, as we were talking about, like tying this back into everything, dealing with this whole like workaholic mindset and just working all the time, it's important to counteract these things with taking breaks, spending quality time with friends, watching movies late at night.
Definitely. That's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, so this final season is right around the corner from Christmas. Watching Christmas movies with friends, it can be a really good way to de-stress during the reading period that's coming up, and exploring the city, taking time to be festive. These are all like really important things to just like to decompress and figure out how you can cool yourself down from all the work that is surrounding final season. And on top of that, like we said, maximizing productivity, keeping a to-do list, dual monitors if they're available, because goddamn, they're really great.
Honestly, dual monitor setup changed my life. I started using the second monitor when online school started. Yeah. It's a game changer. It's revolutionary.
But yeah, so in light of final season, we wanted to talk about the workaholic mindset and sort of where it stems from and sort of ways to deal with it and to I guess counteract it.
And above all, have fun.
Yeah, just have fun.
You only get this life once.
Yeah, because college is some of the most important years of our life, and I at least for me personally, I really wanted to like take the time to enjoy college while I'm here, because in high school, like you're working all the time, and that's another thing. Like I've kind of realized like, okay, I gotta really like enjoy these years, because
and that's the last thing, like doing genuinely new things, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. I got to do theater for the first time in college since like middle school, and it was just such a fun experience for me, and it's push yourself out there, because the world's your oyster. You just got to meet it halfway.
Very much so. So, and with that being said,
I think that's our time, bro.
Yes, and we hope that final season goes well for all of you. So we do want to say good luck, and please don't stress yourself out too much.
Yes, sir.
Take care of yourself.
Once again, you've been listening to 101.1 FM WBRU-LP WFOO-LP WVVX-LP Providence. Thank you for tuning in to the Outta Pocket Podcast. We'll see you guys next week. Remember to eat your vegetables, and for those of you guys out there who need to hear it, she was just being nice to you, bro. She wasn't flirting.
Catch you later, guys. Eat with